everyone and welcome to Brush and Bubbles. So if you would like to follow along and paint this at home, then simply keep watching because I'll be breaking this painting down into manageable steps so that everyone can enjoy it and paint along from the comfort of their own homes. Before we get started, I'm just going to talk you through what you'll need to create the painting at home. I would start by covering up your table with some tablecloth or old newspaper. You'll need a canvas. I've got an 8x10 size canvas here and I'm going to be painting in landscape. You'll need a few size brushes. I've got a medium square shaped brush and then two smaller brushes. You'll then need some kitchen towel, a glass or a pot of water, a palette to pop all of your paints in, your acrylic paints. And once we get started, I'll be showing you which paint colours I'm using, but please feel free to change up any of the colours or shades that you wish for your own painting. I've also got a pencil here because we're going to be drawing out our dog shape. So I'd have a little think about what kind of dog you want to go for. You might just want one breed, you might want a few. It's totally up to you what breeds and colours and shapes and sizes of dogs that you do for your painting. I've got my little dog Albie here to keep me company while we paint too. So let's jump straight into our Pets Yoga painting. In the palette, I have white, yellow, blue, black, red, pink and green. We're going to start with our background. So this is going to be painting in the colour for our floor and also the colour for our walls. So it's totally up to you what colour you want to do for this. I'm going to go for a lemon sort of yellow for my floor, and then I'm just going to keep the back wall of the studio white. So taking my medium brush, I'm just going to pick up a couple of scoops of white paint and move it over to a different dish. And then I'm going to add a little bit of yellow to it, give it a good mix to make a nice pastel yellow shade. I would then add a couple of drops of water into this paint mixture and just give it another good mix in. Moving over to my canvas, I'm just going to figure out where halfway down the canvas is, and then with my medium paintbrush with my yellow shade, I'm just going to draw a line all the way across the canvas. Once you're happy with that line, we're just going to take the same colour and fill in the whole bottom section of our canvas with this shade. I would then just make sure that you're painting the sides of the canvas as well, and also the bottom. As soon as you're happy with that section, we're just going to give our medium brush a good wash in the water and a small dry on your kitchen towel. We're now going to move on to painting the top section of our canvas. So like I mentioned, I'm just going to be going for pure white, but you can use any shade or colour that you want. So again, with my medium brush, I've just picked up some of that pure white and I'm just going to start painting that top section onto the canvas. But I'm just going to leave a little bit of time before I go ahead and add this white paint next to where I've got my yellow paint, just so I can allow the yellow a little bit more time to dry, and then I can overlap the white with the yellow just to give it a nice crisp even line. As soon as your floor section feels like it's quite dry, you can then just bring the wall colour down. So I'm just picking up some more of my white and I'm just going to carefully fan out the bristles of my medium brush, just pushing them down onto the canvas and carefully dragging my hand along, and this should give us a nice crisp line with our paint. We can now move on to creating the shade for our yoga mat. So I'm going to go for a sort of baby pink yoga mat, and you can use any brush that you want for this. You might even want to swap between your medium brush and your smaller brush, but I'm just going to mix up the colour to start with. So I'm going to use white as my base. So I'm just picking some up and moving it to a different dish on my palette, and then I'm going to add a little bit of pink to it and give it a good mix. So when it comes to painting in our yoga mat, we want to add a little bit of perspective within the room. So it's going to be slightly shorter along the top, and then we're going to bring the sides down in a diagonal line, and then it's going to go all the way across and meet on the other side. So I would start with the back of the yoga mat first, and I've just picked up my pink paint on my square brush, and I'm just going to carefully push the bristles of the paintbrush down, and again just drag my hand along the canvas just to help me get a nice straight line. And then picking up my smaller brush and some more of the pink paint, I'm just going to sketch in a sort of diagonal line going down on either side. I'm then going to link these two lines up by drawing a straight line all the way across. And now I'm simply going to fill it in. So yoga mats don't tend to be too wide, they're actually quite long and fairly narrow, so I would just be careful not to make your yoga mat too wide. But you can take this opportunity just to amend your shape if you want to, so you might just want to match the sides, but again, if they're not completely equal, then please don't worry. I would just recommend washing your brushes. When the top section of our canvas is dry, we can now move on to painting in a couple of windows. So for this, we just want to mix up a sky blue colour. So I've taken my smaller brush and I'm just picking up some white paint as my base, and then I'm just going to add a little bit of blue to it and give it a good mix. With this blue colour, we simply just want to paint in the shape of our windows. So you can do any shape that you want for this. You might want to have them from the floor going up. You might just want circles, squares, rectangles. It's totally up to you. I'm going to go for 2 rectangles on either side of the back wall. So I'm just going to start by painting them in with this blue paint. Once you're happy with that, you can just fill it all in with this blue paint. So once you've filled it in, it's sort of easier to tell if you need to change the shape slightly. So you might want to make it a little bit thicker on one side. You might just want to straighten up the edges. It's totally up to you. Have a little stand back and see if you want to change the shape for your window. While the paint underneath is still wet, what I suggest doing is just picking up a tiny little bit of white paint on the end of your brush. And I haven't actually washed off any of the blue, because all we're going to do now is just create a few clouds that will be outside the window. So for this, I'm just going to start swirling the white paint into that blue paint, and as you'll see, it will start to sort of blend in a little bit, and I'm just giving it a sort of cloud-like triangle shape. You can add another one as well, just to add a little bit of movement outside of the window. And then whenever you're happy with that window, we can just do exactly the same on the other side. So starting by just drawing in the shape, and then you can fill it in and add in the clouds. So while we wait for our painting to dry, I'm just going to talk you through the basic shapes that we need to create our puppy. So here we have the shapes of our dog broken down. So as you can see, we start with a body, which is sort of like an oval shape with a more flat curved base. We then add a curved oval on the top for the head. We then add some ears. Depending on which kind of breed you're doing, you just want to change up the ears. We then add 2 sausage shapes for the legs and the feet, some legs at the front. We then paint it all in and then add the eyes and the nose. So you can practice this on a bit of paper first. So we just want to start with the body, which is the oval shape with the curved base. And then on top of this, we draw the oval head, which will overlap the body. We then draw in the ears, which scoop around from the head. The back legs, which are 2 sausage shapes which come out from the base of either side of the body, and then 2 other sausage shapes which come out flat on the floor for the feet. We then have a line coming down and another little oval shape at the base for the front paw and the other front paw and leg. And then once you've got all of that in, you just fill it in with your paint colour of choice. And then we'll just add 2 eyes and a little nose. So moving back over to our painting, which should be lovely and dry now, we can just take our pencil and very carefully draw in the shape of our puppy. What I would say with this is just be really careful when you're pushing down the pencil onto the canvas, just because it's really hard to rub out pencil over paint. So we just want to make sure that we're being nice and careful when we're drawing out the shape for our dog. So just decide where you want your dog on your painting. I'm going to put mine in the middle of my yoga mat, and you can carefully draw it out using the shapes that we've already practiced. Once you're happy with the rough shape of your dog, you can then also just draw in a little tail coming out from the side, curving around. This is the fun bit, because we're now going to move on to creating the colour for our dog. So I'm going to go for a light brown coloured puppy. So I'm just going to take my smaller brush and I'm going to create this colour now. So I'm going to start with white as my base. I'm just picking up a couple of scoops of white and moving it over to a different dish on my palette. I'm then going to add some red paint to this, couple of scoops again. And then I'm also going to add a tiny little bit of black and a scoop of yellow and give it a good mix. And I'm going to see what kind of brown I come up with. So I'm just going to add some more yellow to this, a tiny little bit more black, a tiny bit more red, and give it a good mix. So I'm quite happy with this colour that I've got here, but what I want to do is lighten up a little bit of it. So I'm just scooping some out and moving it over to a spare bit of my palette, and I'm just going to add a little bit more white to it and give it a good mix. I'm now going to do exactly the same thing again, but this time I'm going to add a little bit more white and also a little bit more yellow to make more of a beige shade. So here I have 3 different variations of brown, a darker one, a lighter one, and then more of a beige shade. Taking whichever brush size you want, we can now start filling in our puppy. So I'm going to start with my lighter shade to start with, and I'm just going to fill in between all of these pencil lines. Once you're happy with that, I'm just going to pick up a little bit more white paint on my brush, and with this I'm just going to start working it in to the puppy just where I've got the other colour, and I'm actually focusing this just on the chest to start with, just because I want the chest to be slightly lighter, and because the paint underneath is still wet, it sort of merges in quite nicely and just gives us another tone to the puppy's fur. And then with my darker shade of brown, I'm actually just going to start outlining certain areas of the puppy. So I'm just going to carefully outline around the body and underneath the chin where the head is, and this will just allow us to start seeing the different areas of the body and the different shapes that we've created. It's also a nice way for us to be able to see where the front of the legs are, so I'm just going over where my pencil line was for my legs and the front paws so we can see them. If you want to, you can do the ears a different colour, so I'm just going in with my mid shade that I made of my brown, and I'm just going to add a little bit of this onto the ears just so that they're slightly different from the rest of the body. We can just move on to creating a grey shade for the windowsill of the windows. Some white paint and a little bit of black, and give it a good mix to make a nice light grey. What we can do is just a little cross going across each window, and then also just a border around this blue that we've already created, just to give our window a frame and then also the structure within it. As soon as you're happy with your windows, we can now give our puppy a little ball to play with. So just pick up any size brush that you want and pick a colour of choice. I'm going to go for some green for this. Just going to draw a little green circle on my yoga mat. Moving back over to our puppy, I'm just going to pick up a tiny little bit of black paint on my small brush, and I'm just going to do 2 tiny little dots for the eyes. And then a little button shape for the nose. With a clean brush, I've just picked up a little bit of white paint, and I'm just going to do a curved line over the ball. And as a last finishing touch, I've just taken another brush. I'm just going to pick up some of this pure pink paint that I've used to mix in for my matte colour. I'm moving it over to a different part of my palette, and then I'm going to add some water to it and really mix it in. And then I'm going to load up my paintbrush with this watered down paint, but I'm actually just going to dab it off on my kitchen towel, so I've only got a very small amount on my brush. Now with this, all I'm going to do is start etching it onto my yoga mat just around where the puppy sits, just to create a little bit of shadow and texture around where he is. And if you want to, you can add loads more puppies into your masterpiece. Thanks everyone for watching. Bye!